The most frequent thing that people ask us, the pro players, what crosshair do you use or why do you use exactly this crosshair? So we decided to uncover everything about crosshairs and even pulled some statistics about what crosshairs best pro players in the world are using right now. When you first start Valorant, you're met with this bad boy as your default crosshair, but you almost never see anyone use it in actual games. With the default crosshair, movement error and firing error are on, which can be distracting when you're trying to aim at enemies. I highly recommend turning those off as they are not really necessary. Crosshair is also quite large and has a fairly big gap in the middle, which isn't ideal. Large crosshairs can be good for short-range gunfights, but it is often a disadvantage at long range. It can make it hard to get headshots or even cover your target completely. The most common crosshairs you'll see in game are plus, dot, or a plus with the gap. You'll frequently see this when you spectate anyone in game. As a quick side note, if you ever want to copy your teammate's crosshair, type /cc in the chat to import their crosshair profile to yours instantly. So there is a small tip. Depends on your aiming style and how you're playing the game. Some crosshairs will be good, some are not. So we decided to ask FNATIC pro players why they choose exactly this crosshair over the other ones.
I decided to use it just because of mainly I was OPing at the start of the game a lot because it was broken that time, you could jump and stuff. And then I got used to it, and then after that I was let me try plus crosshair traditional ones that I had from previous games and stuff, blah blah blah, and it's it didn't work out the same way, so I'm just stuck with the dot now.
Why I use the plus crosshair? I mean, I used to play it back when I played Counter-Strike, so I guess it's just a comfort thing. I mean, white plus, you can see it clearly on most maps in most situations. I mean, I play stretched and he plays the native rest, like full rest, so for him it maybe looks more nicer with a dot. But for me, when I play stretched, the dot looks a bit weird. I do play it sometimes, but yeah, ultimately I prefer the plus crosshair.
Basically, I'm using different types of crosshair. I can swap them whenever I want. It's like dot, gap and plus. I mean, one of the most popular in the game. So dot crosshair you can one-tap more than before, just simply because it's harder to spray with that, and vice versa. And for example, for long range, I think the crosshairs with the gap are better for me, at least. Maybe some would rather use plus crosshairs, but it just all comes down to personal preferences. Even though we only covered 3 types of crosshairs, in Valorant you could do many other of them, and it's just impossible to cover all of these crosshairs in one video. So just make sure that your crosshair isn't too thick, big, isn't distracting, and it will work for every range when you're playing the game. Choosing the right color for your crosshair is really important for FPS games. It needs to be something that is clearly visible and stands out against the environment. Valorant provides you with a selection to choose from and even allows you to use your own custom color. Whilst the set options you can pick from seem limited, there's a good reason why you don't see certain colors on there. For example, having an orange crosshair could cause problems on maps like Lotus or Bind. It blends into certain areas of the map and can make it challenging to aim, especially when you need to react quickly. This is why colors that have a high contrast to the environment work well. If you look at these 2 crosshairs in the grayscale, the orange is too close in value to the background. It doesn't stand out and almost blends into the wall. The reason why the blue works well in this example is because it's complementary color to the orange. Complementary colors are colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel. This also applies to enemy agent outlines. Sometimes yellow outlines can make it hard to spot enemies at a distance like this. A purple outline on a character like Reina can be troublesome, as it can make it hard to distinguish between an enemy or an allied player. Losing focus of your crosshair, even for a moment, can make a difference in winning or losing the round. So it's very important to choose a color that stands out. Any of the default colors are a safe bet. Of course, some display settings can affect that slightly, but you can just adjust these things pretty easily. To be honest, I don't know why people are asking this question, just because I never think about that. I'm just playing the game. You don't need to focus on where you should look. You just play the game, and you will find out how you're maintaining your focus while trying to aim. You're not thinking about it while playing, and you can't. Because if you will do, you will lose your performance instantly, because you're just thinking about useless things.
No, I don't think your crosshair matters. I mean, obviously you want to not have a crosshair that blocks your screen. Just about finding a preference. If you want like a small, big one or with outlines, it's all about preference, I think. Pretty much play with anything, as long as you're not like trolling with your crosshairs.
Don't just take our word for it though. We gathered all the data for crosshair usage on Valorant champions from all pro players, and we crunched the numbers to find out which is the most preferable crosshair in the world. We looked at every team that qualified for the event, including ourselves, and had some surprising results. In terms of shape, we found that around 20% of pros use a dot style crosshair. Next was the plus at 30%. The most popular style of crosshair was the gap, with around 40% of pros using it. The remaining 10% used the crosshair, which we classed as miscellaneous. For color, we had a clear winner. There were a handful of players using pink, red and black. Cyan and green were fairly popular at around 20% each, but white made it up a whopping 47% of all crosshair colors. We also looked at whether or not players used an outline on their crosshair. In total, 42% of players used an outline and 58% did not. We also noticed that most of the pro players shared a specific crosshair. The most popular crosshair for pro players is the dot size 2 crosshair. 18% of players use this, a large number of them being duelist mains. In close second place was the 1-4-2-2 gap, also known as the tense crosshair. The codes for these crosshairs are in the description for this video if you want to try them out. So, to answer the question, does your crosshair actually matter? It obviously matters until you will have a troll crosshair. After that, everything comes down to a personal preference, and you just need to find out which crosshair is the best for you and which suits you the best. The more comfortable your crosshair is, the easier aiming will be. But you need to remember that you don't need to change your crosshair all the time, and just don't forget about your mechanics. And good luck with your matches.